I'm not teaching, I'm publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning for the Life in the UK test part 89, the Enlightenment, that is on the page 35. While doing risk training, and if you participate in risk training, that is at your own risk. The Enlightenment. So we're having nothing done before to the Enlightenment. During the 18th century, new ideas about politics, philosophy, and science were developed. Let's do that sentence again. During the 18th century, so from 1700 until 1799, new ideas about politics, that is the time of the Glorious Revolution, if I'm right. It's not part of the Restoration. It is not part of the Glorious Revolution. It is not part of the Bill of Rights, 1689. Not part of 1695, when newspapers were allowed to operate without a governmental license. It is the time of Queen Anne, death 1714, and the first Prime Minister, 1721, 1742. We don't know many more, and the time of the founding of Royal Society, we don't know it exactly, but it must have been something like 1680. There was in 1679 was the Habeas Corpus Act. So that is all not in the 18th century. But in the 18th century, so we know nothing about the 18th century. If we know something, Robert Burns was there 1759-96, I don't have the picture. 1759-96, Robert Burns was there, we know something. So during the 18th century, new ideas about politics, philosophy and science were developed. So new ideas about politics, so what happens in the parliament, philosophy, so how people make riddles, but also they want to go about enlightenment, so they mean with philosophy how to live life, and not just in just some thought games and thinking about life, but actually then the philosophy after which life is lived in the normal population. But I don't know what else going on, I haven't read it. Philosophy and science were developed. No, new ideas about science were developed. That's just withdrawn. This is often called the Enlightenment. So that new ideas, which is again very complicated to understand if one does not know this. Now, do we expect all these times that people already know that? But if we know already all of it, what's the use of this? Especially for the people who need it. This is often called the Enlightenment, so that the people were enlightened in their brain, basically because they had new ideas about politics, philosophy and science. Let's do a little bit of wrist training. We're having the arms comfortable next to us, hands front to fists, and we're bringing these fists in the spotlight exercise, down and then up. And we're having 3 rules. The first rule is that we are stopping immediately as soon as we feel pain. The second rule is that we go only as far as we can go with a little bit of effort. And the third rule is that we're not overdoing it. We're doing even less when we can do. We don't want to exhaust these muscles. We want to strengthen them. So that was enough for the final time. And now the second exercise, it's similar. The fists going to the outsides and then to the insides, and that is the flashlight. And we will directly proceed with the next 2 exercises. It is the magician, very similar, same movement, but now our hands are formed to flat hands. A few last times to the inside and to the outside. And now the last exercise before we go on with the Enlightenment, the pancake flipper. We are opening the palms to the sky and we are turning them again down to the ground. A few more times, down and up, and the last time down And so the Enlightenment, during the 18th century, new ideas about politics, science and philosophy developed, and that all is called the Enlightenment. Many of the great thinkers of the Enlightenment were Scottish. So many people who had these great ideas were from Scotland. Adam Smith developed ideas about economics which are still referred to today. So it happens still today in our 21st century that people are referring to ideas which Adam Smith once had to economics. Adam Smith. It's something we should not try to remember. David Hume's ideas about human nature continue to influence philosophers. So, and then there's another person, David Hume, and he had some ideas about human nature, and that influenced philosophers. Human nature, I think they mean behavior. That would make sense with philosophers. So David Hume had some ideas about the human nature, and this is still influential for philosophy today. So we are having Adam Smith and David Hume. It's spelled Hume. Adam Smith and David Hume. Scientific discoveries such as James Watt's work on steam power helped the progress of the Industrial Revolution. So in science were progress made, for example, the steam power. Works on steam power had James Watt done. So he discovered basically that if you cook water, it expands, or rather it vaporizes at 100 degrees. So basically he did not discover it, just said that. He wrote about that something that water, when it vaporizes at 100 degrees, it expands. So if you have a bottle full of water and you expand it, you heat it up, the fire underneath, and when it reaches 100 degrees, the water vaporizes. And when that happens, it takes more room. If water gets hot, it needs more room and it expands. And normally, if you don't have a lid on the pot, it just vaporizes away. But if you close now the pot, it happens more and more pressure. And that is a lot of pressure. And now you can use that pressure. And that is what James Watt had written over. You can use it in a steam engine. Now it pressures up, so you can close a lid onto it. And you can put a heavy weight on it. And after some time the pressure is high enough and the heavy weight is lifted up and the lid is opened again. Now you can use that in a machine. If you put something onto it, I don't know what's the name of it, then the water presses against it, the vapor presses against it, and it's taken up. And if that thing, the idea is if that thing comes up, it could be made part of a wheel. So if that is a circular wheel, you can have it on one side. Maybe it's even better to understand with a rectangular thing. So you have that thing here on the side. Now imagine that lid is opened up. And if that is opened up and lifts up, that wheel turns. So that is our wheel. And we're having here, I don't know what the name of it is, at the side, fixed. And here's the water boiling. And the water boils and it lifts the lid up. And if the wet comes up and is fixed here to that book, to our wheel, that book turns with it. So the steam is cooking and the vapor expands and that thing goes up and the wheel turns. And if you use that very complex machine, you can use many of them and the wheel turns and you can now have a powertrain running or car. So that thing goes up and that turns the wheel a little bit further. Something like that. It's actually, but let's take it with that. It's just that it turns, not the wheel itself, but I don't know it exactly, but it thinks it turns the steel thing in between. So that connecting pieces then fixed at one part, and then that is turned, and that turns then the wheel. Something like that. That works just better. I wanted to do this training. I'm talking about steam engines. So James Watt worked on steam power, and he had written about it and how all of it works. So they could build great railways and lots of other stuff with steam. And that all helped to progress the Industrial Revolution. So James Watt wrote about it. So we're having Adam Smith, let's make it short, Adam Smith about economics, David Hume about, I would really like to say behavior and shorten it down and say instead of human nature, ideas of human nature which influence philosophy today. It is way too complex, just the human behavior. Because human nature, there could be so much in, is this now philosophical meat? There could be so much meant with human nature. But it is on philosophy, so it's human behavior. We're having Adam Smith on economics, David Hume on human nature, and James Watts on steam engines, or what was it exactly? Scientific discoveries such as James Watts' work on steam power help the progress of the Industrial Revolution. Let's do a bit more wrist training. It's not so much. We're having just 2 exercises left. We're bringing the arms out and the hands are formed to fists. So that is the exercise. It's the quadrangular castle uptake. And we're bringing the fists facing each other. And now we're bringing them up. And to the outside. And down. And to the inside. And now down. To the outsides. And up. And the last one to the insides. And now to the last exercise, the crab anxious to a fever. The arm next to us, hand formed to a fist, and we bring this fist down and pressing forward force against the index finger. And now we're pulling a bit from the outside. We're pressing a bit from the top. And a bit from the ground. Now we'll continue with the other hand. And from to a fist, and we're bringing it down and pressing carefully aside. Now we're pulling from the outside. And from the top. And from the bottom. And with relaxation, have a straight arm, make a little bend, and then set on, come with moderate force over the middle part of the lower arm. And the last side. On the other hand, the bend, and then over the middle part of the lower arm. One last time. And we're having 2.5 minutes. Maybe we can come through the Enlightenment. One of the most important principles of the Enlightenment was that everyone should have the right to their own political and religious beliefs, and that the state should not try to dictate to them. This continues to be an important principle in the UK today. So we're having 5 fundamental values and principles of the United Kingdom. These are democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, tolerance of those with different faiths and beliefs, and participation in community life. And we're having 5 also: respect other people and their opinions, treat others with fairness, and look after oneself and your family. So let's read that sentence again. One of the most important principles of the Enlightenment, so of the period of the 18th century, where Adam Smith had something to say about economics, which is still important today, or David Hume about human nature, or James Watts over the steam engine. One of these principles of the time of his Enlightenment time were that everyone should have a right to their own political and religious belief. So that everyone, let's use that example again, that everyone had the right to be for more money for schools. And everyone had the right to be for more money for parks. But it could be also someone saying, no, you need more money for more railways. Or someone could also say, no, I don't want railways, I want more parks. So everyone had the right to their own political belief and also their own religious belief. And that the state should not try to dictate to them. So that the state is not saying them, you all should be for railways in a forceful manner, in a dictating way. This continues to be an important principle in the UK today. So an important principle of the UK is that everyone is entitled to their own political and religious beliefs, and that the state cannot tell them forcefully in a dictating way that they have to do that one thing. That's a bit complicated to express. But that the state should not try to dictate to them. That is a bit complicated to express. But the 5 fundamental principles of the United Kingdom are democracy, rule of law, tolerance of those of different faiths and beliefs, participation in community life, and I forgot something. Next time. Thank you very much, and until next time.